Hello and welcome to SharpHR Career Corner with Karen Sharp Price. This podcast will inform and inspire you in your quest to find the right career path. If you're just starting out, looking to make a change in your field, or transitioning into a new career, then this podcast is for you. We will be sharing tips and providing resources on topics such as writing resumes, interviewing, using LinkedIn, and networking. We will take a look at different careers, companies, and opportunities. You will hear success stories from professionals in all career paths, and so much more. You will leave this podcast with 3 key takeaways that you can easily put into practice. Enjoy!
Welcome to SharpHR Career Corner. I'm Karen Sharp Price. Today we're going to speak to Lisa Stefanie from TripleTrackHR about her career story. Hi Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Karen?
Good. Just trying to stay warm. Seems to be the theme for Buffalo. I want to start back when you were at Penn State and you went to school for your bachelor's in education. Is that correct?
I did, yes.
What were you hoping to do after you graduated from Penn State?
Well, my plan back when I was, 18, 19, 20, was I was going to be a kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
And, get married, white picket fence, 2 children, a dog, all of that.
And life changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your first job out of college?
Yeah, so I did get my degree in education, and I really was going to try to get into a school district when I moved. So I moved up to Buffalo from Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from, in order to, I thought, get scooped up by a district who would absolutely love me because I had done my student teaching abroad. So I thought I was, all that and the cat's meow. Not only did I have my degree and I'm ready to teach, but I had done something overseas. So needless to say, it was at a point in time where it was just prior to a lot of retirements and things happening. So I just missed sort of a window of opportunity where there just wasn't a lot of hiring going on. So I worked in retail, so I could pay my rent and keep my apartment and all that kind of stuff. But my first job really out of college was working in a preschool classroom of a child care center that was sponsored by Merrill Lynch for its employee base that was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I did that right out of college, and then I moved up here and then worked retail, learned a ton by working in retail. I learned so much about people and even just about the city of Buffalo and the cultural gems of Buffalo just by working in retail and talking to people who were coming in to shop or whatever. And then I finally was getting fairly desperate and decided I would accept a long-term substitute teaching position at Gateway Youth and Family Services. And so I did that. And during that time, then the teacher I was co-teaching with knew someone who was going to open an employer-supported childcare center up here in Western New York and introduced me to those folks. And that's actually where I met my now senior business partner way back. And I was involved in that first center that had opened. It had been started with grant funding and that kind of stuff. So I was still working in childcare, and my degree was elementary and kindergarten education. So I was way more equipped to work with little kids than I was the teenagers at Gateway Youth and Family Services, although they taught me a lot too.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how people come into your lives and how then your direction starts to pivot a little bit?
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the things that it's really hard to impress upon younger folks who are just beginning their college careers or just beginning their real employment careers, it's hard to explain how you could have a plan all day long, but so many things have an impact on that plan, and you have to be able to look at that as an opportunity as opposed to something that would hold you back.
Yeah, and if they do have a plan and it doesn't go exactly, that doesn't mean it's failure or not successful.
Exactly.
To go a different direction.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So through all of that, how then did you get to be the president of TripleTrackHR?
Sure. So Angie Klee and I, so she's my senior partner, and we have a junior partner, Christina Klee, and yes, they're related. So I'm the non-family member of a family business, basically, but like family. So Angie and I did a lot of work in the arena of employer-supported childcare, which sort of moved into, over time, additional work-life benefits for large companies and unions, actually, locally. And we built our business on those kinds of programs and supports to, large manufacturing, auto manufacturing primarily, companies. And that was all funded by labor management agreements and things like that out of Michigan. So we did that for about 10 years, actually. And before that 10 years was over, we recognized that the economy was changing and that the funding that had been in place and the focus that had been there by these companies and their associated unions was going to change dramatically, diminish dramatically, probably go away. And so Angie and I kind of looked at each other and said, well, what are we good at? What could we do? Because we employed people, we had responsibilities to those folks and their families. And, what do we do? How do we pivot, right? That back then, that wasn't the word, but yeah, so we recognized that we managed people well. We worked with people well. We had been recognized as, a best place to work, and we took good care of our folks. And we thought if we could teach other entrepreneurs, business owners, nonprofits how to do that, how to handle their people issues and do it so that they too could be best places to work, for which would of course benefit their company and their employee base, then we should try to do that locally. And we had some national contracts and things that we had sort of stuck our toes in the water on that before, and so we wanted to bring it local. And we decided, okay, well let's do HR, human resources. Why not?
So how long has the company
when I
been around?
was, so we've been around since 2006.
Okay.
So quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, had to go back to school and get certified to provide HR consulting. And we had to build a team and all that. And it took a while for TripleTrack to develop, right? Because you have to develop your company. You have to decide what your services are going to be like. You're going to have to, decide how you're going to price, what's going to set you apart from other similar companies and that kind of thing. So it took a while to develop, but we have 8 employees now, and that's good. We don't need to be big at what we do. All our employees are really committed to helping businesses in Western New York be the best they can be by supporting their HR functions. So, we're good. We're growing, and fortunately, we didn't take too much of a hit through this pandemic.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and we did, though. We pivoted to include a new strategic alliance with Envision Benefits Group, and we're offering now employee benefits more directly than we've been able to in the past. We can also offer the Paylocity payroll platform is available through us too. So we did add some services, we added some technology, we partnered a little differently than we have in the past, all to just keep things moving forward.
That's great. So when you're looking at new hires, what kind of background and skill set makes the best candidate for TripleTrack HR?
Yeah, so to come on to our team, we're really, and we hope to be hiring shortly, actually. We typically look for folks that are fairly generalist background. So general HR has kind of maybe been a one-person show at a small to mid-sized business before. Because our typical client base is under 50. So we really are working with small and mid-sized businesses to provide them the support that they need. We'd like them to be certified through either HRCI or SHRM. I think that they have to be outstanding communicators. It's great to know your stuff and know the laws and compliance and that kind of thing, but if you can't communicate that to folks in a way that they can understand it,
Yeah.
And I think that also goes a long way to being able to connect genuinely with our client contacts, because we really become trusted advisors as part of their team of advisors. And so we have to be able to instill some level of trust in that relationship. So people who are able to do that and who enjoy a variety of different tasks and things. People sometimes say, so what does your typical day look like? Oh, it's different every day. And I thoroughly enjoy that. And, you have to be able to kind of embrace that. And nowadays you have to be super flexible because you just never know what somebody's going to need.
Yeah, as an HR consultant, I didn't, in the beginning, before I became one, I didn't know if I would like that kind of change and moving from one company to another within a week and all of that. But that was the part that I loved the most, because I got to dabble in so many different HR issues. If you're an HR person in one place, you may never touch on some of those things. But going to a variety of places, you're dealing with all different types of things. So that is the fun part.
Yeah, I have learned so much about a number of different industries because, we're all over the place. We're in retail and professional offices. We're in nonprofits. We're in small manufacturing. And it makes you think a little bit when you meet some of these folks and start working with them in their companies. You don't realize they're like little gems that are found in Western New York. Like, who knew that, this is how that happened?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and you learn about all those industries. As an HR professional, you may just dabble in one or two industries in your entire career, but as a consultant, you're working with all different kinds of industries, and so you're learning all the time.
Absolutely,
it's a fun. I think it's a fun place to be. So we're going to take a little break and have some fun. I have some questions for you, and so I'm just going to throw them out, and you're just going to say one or the other, or whatever your answer is, your quick answer, just to break things up a little bit, and then we'll get back on track with our questions. But so the first one is, do you prefer virtual or in person?
In person.
Okay. Pizza or wings?
Pizza.
Okay. What's your social media of choice?
Facebook.
Okay. Dog or cat?
We have both, and a parrot.
Okay. You're not going to take favorites, all right?
Yep.
What's your choice of relaxation?
I love to read.
Okay. So here's my next question. Books or music?
That's tough. Books more regularly, music, I sing in a show chorus
Oh,
that
that's
when we
right.
could meet in person. Yeah, it was a thing and it brings me great joy, but now we're meeting virtually. It's not exactly the same. So I guess at this point, books, but
Okay.
I love music as well and singing.
So as a side note on books, audio or actual books that you can hold?
I do both, actually.
You really are
I
diverse.
know, I have, yeah.
Okay, cover letter, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. What's more important to you receiving, a cover letter or a thank you note?
Oh gosh. It kind of depends what the cover letter says.
Okay.
I think the thank you note, handwritten and all that kind of stuff is nice and sets things apart. But cover letters can be kind of valuable too. So,
Okay. Choice of beverage.
I like Trulies,
Oh,
like
okay.
the hard seltzer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So otherwise I drink a lot of water and coffee.
Okay. Phone call or email?
Email.
Okay. And the bonus question, which is probably the most important question that I'm going to ask you today, Bills or Chiefs?
Oh my gosh, Bills.
Okay, just testing your loyalty there. That's all.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we're going to get back into to some more serious questions, but what types of things do you see candidates do when applying for jobs that puts them in the no pile right away? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, with the pace of everything, being done virtually and through technology these days, I really feel there are a couple of things that we see. One of the things is people applying for jobs that they have no business applying for. Like, it's clear that they haven't read the posting. And I know postings are boring and often they're too long and, that kind of thing. But it's very clear perhaps what the certification that's required is to do that job or, a certain level of experience with a specific skill. And that person, at least via their resume, shows none of that, not even close. And so I think that's a waste of everybody's time, unfortunately. Now, if I see somebody that looks a little close, I will take the time to do a quick phone call to better understand how close that person might be to actually being sort of qualified, because people have stories and what they're it's very hard to learn everything you need to know initially off of a resume. That's why I do like cover letters sometimes. So that's one. Another one is typos on resumes and misspellings. And I don't put people aside as a result of that always, because I think that we're in a time right now that, everybody's communicating through texts and emails and there's spell check. And I read, newspapers and bulletins every day that come through with all sorts of typos, and that drives me nuts too. But what I do think, and what I try to tell, clients who might be hiring, and if the job requires a level of accuracy in communication, like emails and that kind of thing, then multiple typos or misspellings is a problem.
Yeah.
If that's not a thing, then, all it may tell you is that someone doesn't have a great attention to detail or whatever, but it's typically not a deal breaker. because, you've got to assume that they have other better skills, right? And that goes to their story. And then the last one, I think, is when you do finally talk to somebody on the phone, perhaps in a phone interview or pre-screen or whatever, and it's clear that they haven't done their homework. They don't remember that they applied for the job and it was just the other day, or, they didn't have time to look on the website or whatever. And that always bothers me because I schedule a phone screen. So it's not like I'm calling somebody out of the blue and starting to ask them questions. So at the very least, take the last 10 minutes prior to the phone call and get on the web and do something, that prepares you for that. So that kind of, those three things, I think, show maybe a lack of commitment to the process.
Well, and I also think when it kind of goes hand in hand, when you talk about one of the problems being that people apply to jobs that they really clearly aren't qualified for. If you're doing what you should be doing, and that is really targeting companies and the companies that you want to work for because of the company culture, the dynamics of the job, things like that, then you should already know more about the company, so that when you're in an interview and they ask you, what do you know about us? You really should have already researched that prior to even applying to the job. So some of these
Right.
things are hand in hand. And I think people tend to just send out 20 resumes hoping that somebody is going to bite, somebody is going to take them and call them. And so I think that is a real problem. I think people need to stop and think about how they're going about their strategy of applying for jobs. And then I think maybe too, because of some of the requirements for unemployment, and they have to apply to so many jobs, they tend to sometimes just grab and apply.
Sure. And I think you're right about that. That's, a downside of that particular, process as well, I think.
Yeah. You were talking earlier a couple times about certification, and there are now two. So there's the SHRM CP, and then there is the old one, which is the PHR or the SPHR. Do you have a preference on either one of those?
I don't. I am certified under both.
Me too.
I think it depends on the individual and they're very similar in terms of process. And I think it's just been in the last 10 years or so that companies, when they're hiring, are looking for people who are certified in HR. I mean, it was very unusual for them to question that. And so many HR positions were filled by, bookkeepers and, finance folks, or someone who agreed to do payroll, or whatever, and they learn on the fly, and in many instances did a great job. But I think certification is now important in it, but I don't think that it matters which, because HRCI that had the certification first, SHRM was part of that, back in the day, and then they sort of split off and did their own. So I think they both hold a strong level of validity.
Okay. Okay. What types of things do you think stand out? Can you think of things that candidates did to try to, get the offer, get the position, that really stood out to you among their competition?
Follow-up is always a thing. I really appreciate when I phone screen somebody and, on that phone screen, I may try to preempt things and ask for them to email me some references or something. And, not shortly after we hang up, I get those references. And so there's, follow-up, follow through. I think following up, if, it's not unusual for us to be doing some recruiting here and there for clients as one of our services, and something delays the process. Typically, the client needs to think something through or whatever. And so, a week could go by, and a week these days in recruiting is long.
Yeah.
And so, if somebody calls and says, I was just checking in because we spoke a few days ago, and I really appreciate that. I also think that I'd like to just say something about cover letters, because I don't think this was always the case, but I do think now that a cover letter, as long as it's well written, is uniquely capable of telling more of the story than the resume. Not just the blanket cover letter, but something that actually has some substance to it, that maybe tells the story, that maybe somebody's re-entering the workforce after, being home raising children or something, and there's a huge gap in the resume. Maybe in that cover letter, they talk about what that is, what that gap was. So it's something, the cover letter, I feel, should be something that prompts the person who's reviewing the cover letter and the resume to want to know more about you and what you've done and maybe what you have to offer. So that's what I mean about the cover letter. And then I do think that in interviews, when candidates can ask thoughtful questions, at the end, where you say typically, and are there questions we could answer for you? Or is there anything you'd like to know about, or whatever? When someone has some thoughtful questions, when someone actually, when we used to do this in person, they would pull out their notebook and they'd written some questions down, and that's impressive to me as well.
And those are little things that you would think that the majority of people that are out there looking for jobs do, and you would be surprised that they don't. So when you come along and you give them what they're looking for, you send the thank you note right away. I just did some interviews this week, and as soon as I finished, the one person sent me a thank you, and the other one I never received one for to this day. So and that sticks in my mind, because I'm looking for someone who is detail oriented, who is on top of things, who is responsive. And so those things do make a difference. And I tend to tell people, when you're doing a thank you note, you can do the email thank you note so that if the decision's being made within a very short period of time, they'll receive it. But to really top things off, write a handwritten one, because maybe it'll take a week or two before they actually make the decision. And now you've given them 2 thank you notes and 1 in handwriting, which is an added plus.
Right. And I think even if you apply all this to some of the concepts behind marketing, so you're marketing yourself as a candidate for a job, and we know that it takes up to 10 touches for someone to really buy your product, or whatever it is that you're trying to market. And so those additional touches, whether it's through email or a phone call or a handwritten note, is just one more opportunity for you to be remembered and stand out.
Yeah. I think that those are really important things, and everybody can think about, what is their special touch that they can leave behind that is unique to them. And I think it makes a difference. When we leave each podcast, we like to have 3 suggestions or tips that somebody who might be listening, who could be thinking about, making a change, transition, maybe they're unemployed, maybe they've been sort of depleted in trying to find a job right now during the pandemic, and their heart's not in it anymore. What are 3 suggestions, 3 things that you think somebody could do that might be looking for a new opportunity right now?
Sure. I think particularly in Western New York, networking is really helpful. And I don't mean necessarily professional networking and finding a group to join and that kind of thing. I mean, if you have the wherewithal to do that, great. But I'm talking about, talk to your neighbors, talk to people that you interact with, pay attention when you're going into stores, and there are just ways to meet people, and then you just never know what that connection could bring, right? So I think networking is big, and, thinking about who do you know, where do they work, how might they be able to connect you, and asking that, I'm searching for a job and I'm struggling a little bit. Is there, could you point me in the direction of XYZ, right? So I
Mhm.
think that that's one thing that we do very well in Western New York, and so I think that's a good one. I think people who are starting to get that itch of needing to move on to something else should probably start looking before they feel they really need to, right? Like, I think it's good to know always kind of what's out there, what's available, so that, you want to be in control of your next career move. You don't want to be in a position where you're on the defense instead of the offense,
Right.
if you will. So I think that that's key. And then I think right now too, there's a lot of recruiting done through LinkedIn for a number of different types of more professional roles. But if folks aren't on LinkedIn, they should probably do that, develop a page. And that's another way to start your networking to do that. But, I think that it's unusual right now for people to not have a social media presence.
Right.
And so that almost raises red flags.
Mhm.
Whereas, so I think LinkedIn is the place to go for that.
Okay. Yeah, I think self-branding, it's you've got to in this day and age. And sometimes people might be a little leery of the whole social media scene and what to use and how to use it and things like that. But
Mhm.
on the professional side with LinkedIn, I think that it's pretty standard. And 100% of the time, I think people will look for you on LinkedIn when you apply and just want to see a little bit more about you. You can't fit everything on your resume, and on LinkedIn, you can put everything. So it tells a little bit more of your story, which I think is important. When you were talking about a gap on your resume, I saw something on LinkedIn just in the last day or two. Someone was posing the question to recruiters asking if they saw a big gap on a resume, would they still consider them? And I responded to it, and I read the other people who responded, and they said yes. They wouldn't say that would be a complete turnoff. They'd want to know more. They want to hear what the story was, and putting that in the cover letter, like you said, um, answers a lot of questions so that the person who's reading it really, of course, the question is going to come up if you had a 10-year gap. So don't hide it, put it out there and explain. There are so many reasons, the care of
Mhm.
your parents, taking care of
Right.
your own children. And now with the pandemic, you're going to see a lot more gaps in the next year to 2 years to 3 years on resumes because people have to figure out what they're going to do if they're unemployed. So, people should understand that there's a lot going on in everybody's lives right now. And
Yeah. The other way that I think a cover letter, the other sort of situation that a cover letter I think can help is, I talk with a lot of our clients who will say to me, well, look at his or her resume. They're certainly overqualified. Why would they want this job? Well, that's the thing. There's a story behind everybody applying.
yes,
Maybe at that point in their career, they want something that it seems to be less responsibility, maybe than they've had before, or maybe they're wanting to reinvent themselves, or whatever. There are all sorts of reasons for that, and that would be another kind of thing to address in a cover letter,
yeah,
because I do think people get passed over right out of the gate if they've got this fabulous, manager this, CEO that, whatever on
hmm,
their resume, and they're applying for something that's much more, middle of the road or in a support kind of position as opposed to a leadership position. So,
yes. I totally agree. I've had clients come to me, and their biggest concern is their salary because maybe they were making a high salary, and they they climbed the ladder. They got to a point where they felt like they were successful. They don't have that burning desire anymore. They still want to contribute. They still want to be a part of the workplace. And they don't need, they don't need the high salary, for whatever their reasons are. It's not as important as it was at one point to reach that. And I think that people get a little nervous about, they're just going to take this and only stay for a short period of time and then move on to something bigger and better. But there's a lot of people out there that don't want bigger or better. They just want to finish up their professional career in a stable environment where they actually have that work-life balance, which I think is more important at some points of your life. And that story can be told and explained. So there is a lot of people out there in that position. So I want to thank you for your time, because I think you've shared a lot of information, a lot of things that people can start doing right now, just to tweak, just tweak some of the things that we talked about. If someone is interested in applying to TripleTrackHR, what should they do? How do they go about it?
You know what? I'd be happy for them to just give me a phone call, or send me a resume directly to my email. And and if they're hearing that because of this podcast and want to reference that, that's great too. I always like to know where people find us or hear about us, or what brought TripleTrack to their attention. So
Sure.
Just a direct contact.
Okay. And I will be putting that information in the description for the podcast, so people would also be able to see it. And if someone's interested in hiring TripleTrackHR for their company, for their HR needs, what is the best way to reach out? Same
approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll leave your LinkedIn profile and your email address, if that's okay, in the description, and people can reach out to you. Great. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It was fun. Thank you, everyone, for listening to SharpHR Career Corner. You can find the podcast on pretty much all podcast outlets. If you enjoy listening, I encourage you to download them, leave a comment, and share with others that you know. The more downloads and comments and likes that our podcast receives, the better our ratings and the easier we can be found. So thank you in advance. Until next time, everyone, we need to show a lot more kindness in the world, and it starts with you and I. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.